Football on off the ball.
With Sky, the Premier League is back. Watch every live game for the rest of the season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
This is News Talk.
Welcome back. So we have the football show coming up at 9 o'clock when we're going to reflect on the Manchester Derby and the North London Derby. Philippe Beauclair and Jonathan Wilson will be with us for that. Monday Night Rugby coming up after 8. But right now we want to talk about Everton and the crisis that is engulfing the club both on the pitch and off the pitch. I'm joined by Dominic King, who's the Northern football correspondent for the Daily Mail. Evening, Jonathan. Or evening, Dominic.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm all right. So, crisis, I think, is putting it mildly at Everton. On the pitch, then, they are second from bottom in the table. 10 defeats in all competitions from their last 13 games. 15 points. Joint lowest ever at this stage of the season. There is no question they are right in a relegation fight. And understandably, there have been murmurings and frustrations and annoyance and outpourings of anger from supporters towards the running of the club in recent weeks and even over recent seasons, but it's really boiled over the past few days. And the news came through on Saturday morning that the club chairman Bill Kenwright, their chief executive Denise Barrett-Baxendale, their finance director and club legend Graham Sharp, who's also involved at a very senior level, wouldn't attend their game against Southampton because of the nature of police intelligence that had been gathered, and maybe that they wouldn't be safe if they went to the game. Now, Merseyside Police have issued a statement today. They've said that they are liaising with Everton Football Club following alleged threats towards directors ahead of the game against Southampton. No threats or incidents were reported to police prior to the game, but we are in communication with the club to establish if any offences have taken place and to ensure that any future reports are received through existing channels. Any threats reported to Merseyside Police will be assessed and investigated as a matter of course and appropriate safety measures implemented. We're also aware of videos in circulation of fans approaching players' cars as they made their way from Goodison after the match. At this stage, no offences have been reported. This feels somewhat unprecedented, certainly in modern football, the attacks that are coming towards the directors. Can you fill us in as to how this has developed over the past couple of weeks?
There's one word I think that sums up the situation quite perfectly, and that's toxic. The club issued a statement on Saturday lunchtime in which they said the directors not being able to attend the match was a profoundly sad day for Everton, and I think it was unwittingly prophetic for everything that followed. It was a really, really sad day, and I'm full of animosity outside the stadium after the game, with young fans running after some of the players and videoing it all and putting it on social media. I mean, the fact that a man of Graham Sharp's stature and calibre wasn't able to attend, even though he wanted to, I think speaks volumes. There's outside the main stand in Goodison Park, there's a picture of 5 of Everton's greatest strikers. Graham Sharp's on there. The picture must be about 60 foot from top to bottom of him. Sharpie in his absolute prime. And I think that is indicative of where they are. The fact that a man of his calibre can't even turn up.
The frustrations of the supporters, obviously it's been an incredibly disappointing on the pitch, and we'll get to that have been building over recent years towards the ownership. Like, from afar you might look at Everton and think, like, they spent insane money when Farhad Moshiri initially came in. You remember that summer when they signed Davy Klaassen and Michael Keane and Gylfi Sigurdsson for 40 million. They brought Cenk Tosun in for over 20 million. Theo Walcott was there, brought Wayne Rooney back to the club, and they're in the process finally of building their brand new state-of-the-art season. So money has gone in terms of players, maybe not in the last couple of years, but under this ownership, and they're making that big investment around the stadium. What is the root cause then of the anger towards the ownership?
Well, it's a build-up really. So it take you back to when Farhad Moshiri came in, and Roberto Martinez was sacked after having taken the team to an FA Cup semi-final, a League Cup semi-final. The league season was awful. I think they finished 12th, and it really tailed off. Ronald Koeman comes in, and that was supposed to be the start of a brave new era. Farhad Moshiri thought the Northwest was going to be the Hollywood of football. That was the quote he used, Hollywood. But Everton find themselves in this sorry state because the recruitment, primarily, and the decisions they've made with regards to football have been consistently bad. They've the signings in the main have not been improvements on players that they had at the club. If I just take you back 6 years ago yesterday, they beat Manchester City 4-0. It was Pep Guardiola's first year here. And in that team, Romelu Lukaku was up front, Ross Barkley, Gareth Barry were in midfield, Leighton Baines was playing wing back. It was an outstanding Everton side, and unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but it's been an absolute affront to supporters that the decisions and the players that have been brought in just haven't been good enough. They've chopped and changed. The squad now consists of players bought by 7 different managers. It's like sort of Frankenstein's monster. It's just a really, really depressing state. And fans, I mean, there's some of the most knowledgeable fans in the business, and they know football. They know what good football looks like. They know what the team should be. And at the moment, Everton don't reflect anything of the values that they see fit.
In terms of what happens with the ownership then, has Farhad Moshiri given any indication as to whether he wants further investment into the club, as to whether he's going to sell the club, or does he feel that this new stadium is going to be his crowning moment and come hell or high water, he's going to hang around to be there on that opening day? Yeah, look, he's made it clear. He has a 94% stake in the club now, so he is the controlling figure. He made it clear in the summer that he was looking for new investments, and the new investment, I think, is to help make sure that the stadium is the stadium which is going up at a rate of knots on the banks of the River Mersey is finished and to the standard that they want. That is the absolute. Everton need a new stadium, as wonderful as Goodison is. It belongs to a bygone era, really. I mean, it's not conducive for a comfortable experience for fans in modern football. In terms of queuing up for drinks at half time, and just the facilities, they're old, they're dated, and there's no scope for improving it, really. So the stadium's a must, but above all, the team, improving the team is what really matters. And there's no point having a shiny new stadium if the team's going to be in the Championship. And that, sadly, looks like where they're heading at the moment, because they're in an awful sort of vortex of not being able to score goals and conceding too many. In terms of the directors and the threat then, obviously Merseyside Police have said nothing has been reported to them, but there was a story when this first came out that the chief executive, Denise Barrett-Baxendale, had been put in a headlock by a fan after a recent home game. That was from a club source. Has that been verified? That's something that it feels will be somewhat unprecedented in modern football.
Yeah. This is you have to forgive me, because it's a very, very delicate subject. This, and I think there's more. There might be more developments later tonight in terms of the club issuing statements about it. I don't know whether they're going to speak specifically about that, but you're right. It's a hugely very, very serious allegation that's been made, and God forbid if anybody has done that to a woman, has anybody put their hands on it and thinks it's acceptable, they're an absolute disgrace. And going back to some of the scenes that we've seen in terms of players being pursued in their cars, again, it's just overstepping the line. It's just a horrible, horrible situation. It's no way to behave. But there's talks going on with Everton and Merseyside Police, and I don't know whether they're going to comment specifically about certain incidents, but I think this story is going to run for the rest of the week.
You mentioned there Everton fans, they know their football, they've been around the block. I'm wondering how this progresses with this current ownership and this current board of directors. So even if results do start to improve and Everton can go on a run, there's been little sign of they can go and run and get out of the relegation zone and start moving up towards mid-table. Would that have a big impact on the protests, on the attitude towards the board, or is this standoff just likely to run and run?
No, I think the people who are protesting, and the people who are protesting, and they absolutely have the right to protest. They're so entrenched in the views now that nothing will placate them until the changes that they want to see are swept through the club. Now, it all depends on whether Farhad Moshiri wants to do that. He's only spoken a couple of times. He's obviously spoken to TalkSport briefly. He's issued a couple of statements, but he hasn't been to Goodison Park since the 21st of October, I think, 2021, 22nd of October, maybe. So he's like the absentee landlord. He's taken a hands. It's been briefed to us that he's taken a hands-off approach in the last 12 months, but he is calling the shots. He's still in the background making decisions. And the fans want to see him freshen things up, bring new people in. But again, it's an awful situation in the fact that Everton at the moment that really wouldn't appeal. It's like players. They need players to come in, but the bottom of the table, and it's the players that they want wouldn't necessarily be attracted to the situation, even though Everton's just a fantastic name.
And what about in terms of a change of ownership then? We look at Liverpool are up for sale, Manchester United are up for sale. We've seen Chelsea go for, up over $2.5 billion. Surely there will be an opportunity with the new stadium coming down the track for Farhad Moshiri to sell up and make a profit?
Well, that's. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how that situation is going to work out. He's made it clear that he wants investment. If there was somebody who came in and were prepared to give, see out the cost of building the stadium and give him his money back, then maybe he would jump at that. But he's such a mysterious figure. Who knows what's next?
So only 3 wins then on the pitch all season. They are yet again in a right old relegation scrap. And listen, the jury is very much out on Frank Lampard and his quality as a manager. When you mentioned there sort of Frankenstein's monster and this team been an amalgamation of 6-7 different managers, and when you look back from Carlo Ancelotti was the Everton manager, from a Carlo Ancelotti to a Marco Silva who's doing wondrous things at Fulham, to Sam Allardyce been there, different managers, different characters, different styles of play. It feels similar somewhat to Graham Potter, maybe at a lower level at Chelsea, that he's having to work with players that he's not quite sure about, that are on enormous salaries that the club can't get rid of, and he is not getting any investment to bring in players that he might want. That, look, and maybe that's just a more experienced manager can deal with that better.
Possibly, but the thing that worries me about Everton is the fact that they. The confidence is just being sucked out of them. On Saturday, that was as an alarming defeat as I've seen at Goodison. The moment James Ward-Prowse equalised, you could sort of feel the belief sucking out of them, draining from them, the colour draining from people's faces, and the lack of confidence, the rut that they're in. It only suggests they're going one way. And if we're making comparisons, I know you said Chelsea, but there's two that come to mind with me. One, Aston Villa and Sunderland, in terms of, they had both those clubs had big ambitions, in the early part of the century. When Aston Villa were with Martin O'Neill, they were pushing for the Champions League places, but they bought badly. They chopped and changed the managers. And then they ended up paying the price in 2016 and being relegated. Sunderland, we know how many times did they chop and change managers over a 6-year period after Niall Quinn had been chairman. It's an awful situation, and I'm really, really. I never believed that Everton would go down. I never ever believed in my lifetime that Everton would go down. But on Saturday, the whole situation with how toxic and how entrenched people's views are now, and the way they're playing, I'm more concerned than I've ever been.
And that toxic atmosphere and the effect it's having on the players on the pitch, it makes it very hard to judge the the quality of the side, it feels like at the moment, because they're all been affected so much that they can't get anywhere near their best. Because when you do look through that 11, like Jordan Pickford is, the England goalkeeper, and he mightn't be everybody's cup of tea, but there's no doubt there's a lot of quality there. Tarkowski and Cody come in during the summer and you think, all right, got them on the cheap, but rock solid Premier League defenders with a lot of experience, but haven't got anywhere near the levels they got to at Wolves or at Burnley. Amadou Onana played for Belgium at the World Cup and was probably one of the few players who did all right for Belgium at the World Cup, a good young talent. Mikalenko's been a decent signing. Idrissa Gueye, they were probably pleased to get back from Paris Saint-Germain. And like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and maybe he sums it up and his injury problems sum it up, like he looks to have the weight of the world on his shoulders from where position 2 years ago where you thought Everton fans won't like it. Like this guy could easily go for monstrous money to one of the top four teams.
You're absolutely right. Arsenal 18 months ago, the indications were that Arsenal were really going to go all out to get Calvert-Lewin, and I know that discussions had taken place at certain levels with regard to move for him going to the Emirates Stadium. That's how good he'd been playing. But you're right, the confidence is drained. And I mean, you mentioned the two central defenders, but they're not getting the protection that they need in all areas of the pitch. Idrissa Gueye was fabulous in his first spell at Everton, but he just hasn't got anywhere near those heights since he came back. Onana, he was the one player on Saturday that had to be excused from any kind of criticism. He was excellent, tried his absolute hardest, but as I said, the squad just lacks depth, it lacks quality, it lacks goals, and unfortunately it's going to be a struggle all the way till the end of the season.
With what's going on off the pitch, is that protecting Frank Lampard right now, that the board's attention is elsewhere?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Frank's been in football long enough. He's worked with enough managers. He's been around enough situations to know that if you're on a run of 10 defeats in 13 games in all competitions, it basically only heads one way. So unless he can mastermind something very, very quickly, he knows he's in a very, very difficult place. He's quite realistic about it. He's spoken openly to us about it. Said he doesn't need any reassurances from the owner. The owner came out and said last week that he publicly backed him, but I think we all looked at that statement and realised that it wasn't really worth the paper that it was written on, because he did something similar 12 months ago with Rafa Benitez and sacked him 3 days later. So it really doesn't matter what Farhad Moshiri says in public. Results will dictate what happens to Frank Lampard. And
there's certainly a Survivor Series feel of that game on Saturday of West Ham and Everton down at the London Stadium that you feel for Moyes or for Lampard. Whoever loses it, that's probably the end of the road, and who knows, maybe one ends up at the other at some stage over the next few months as well. Dominic, it's pretty grim at the moment for Everton supporters, but thanks a lot for joining us and talking us through everything that's been happening.
It's a pleasure to be on. Look after yourself and see you soon.
Dominic King there, Northern football correspondent for the Daily Mail.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more. Live on Sky Sports.